the different food lobbies are very, powerful.
Because it's state-funded indoctrination of a bad diet.
Yeah, and even here in WA and in America and other places, they're really pushing towards the whole vegan plant-based thing.
Yeah.
I know people who've said that they've had letters sent out from their schools saying that you're not shouldn't send like sandwiches with meat and things like that in, because there's nowhere to refrigerate it, so it just goes bad. I'm like, really? Lunch meat goes bad in 3 hours? Is that a new thing? Because like people have been going to school with like bags of lunch for how many hundreds of years? Someone some guy would go to work with just some piece of meat stuck in his pocket.
Well, if you're Italian in the 80s, you used to go with sausage and full spread.
So when did this happen? So
and I've seen the WEF, World Economic Forum, of course they should be giving dietary advice, but they're pushing for us to eat less meat and more crickets, and
of course.
I guess that's for climate change. And
just picked up on what my thought process was going. What's your opinion on replacing meat with cricket? Because it's theoretically
it's still animals, right? But I mean, it's not really what we're supposed to eat. It's not gonna have as much fat as other things.
You just need way more of it, hey?
Yeah, and it's it's not as good as a cow, and you have to eat a lot more than.
Well, Bear Grylls will have you believe in this protein there is 50 times more.
Yeah.
So
it is good protein source, but it's not. But you actually need a lot of fat.
Yeah.
You need more fat as a proportion of your calories than you do protein.
And does seafood count as well?
Yeah.
Because that's more natural.
Yeah, anything that had parents, basically.
Anything that had parents?
Well, so
it tastes better when they're grown with love.
When you say
fuck these little orphan insects, eh?
When you say we're not supposed to eat it, does geographical sort of lineage and stuff, does that
Great question.
Does that change what we should be eating? Like obviously the Inuits are going to eat something very different to the Aboriginals.
Yeah. And being Italian, would that affect what I would probably be able to process better than this? What are you, Skippy, Kiwi?
Nah, Kiwi, Scotland, Ireland, So they'd be different.
Potatoes.
Be very different. Potatoes. Very different diets was what we'd probably.
So you can have different susceptibilities or defenses against species inappropriate foods, but any species is going to have one optimal diet. For us, that's fatty meat, and you can get that from kangaroo, you can get that from cow, you can get that from whatever, but it's the animal flesh with a lot of fat is what we need as humans. As far as like different plants and things like that, Europeans and other ethnic backgrounds have had access to agriculture a lot further back than say the Australian Aboriginals. And that's why people from Europe do a lot better on carbs and plants and things like that than the native Australians would. When I first got to Australia, probably right away, people were saying, like, hey, when you have an Aboriginal patient come into the hospital, whatever their age is on their sticker, just add 20 years to that. Because when you're looking at different sort of illnesses and diseases, they come sort of in
biologically add 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So if someone's 40, basically think about what's common in 60-year-olds.
Wow.
Because they just age so much quicker, they break down so much faster. I think that's exactly to do with the fact that they don't have as many defenses against these plant toxins that we would, coming from Europe. I remember learning that actually when I was a kid, when I was living in California. I think I must have been like 7. I heard this news story talking about it, how when eating a Western diet, specifically when eating a Western diet, Native Americans were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and all the rest. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, doesn't that mean the food is causing the disease?
Yeah.
Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease just at a lower rate. What are they eating? We're not. What's a non-Western diet? Like, what the hell are they talking about? I didn't know it at the time, but what they used to eat were just they were high-fat carnivores. They ate a bunch of buffalo and pemmican. It was 50-50, dried meat and rendered fat. That was what they would eat. It was about 80% of their calories from fat. That's what they'd eat the whole year. They'd do a buffalo drop. They'd scare like a herd of buffalo over a cliff. They'd all fall to their death. And they would use, knives and things like that to skin them and prepare them. They dry the meat. They'd make pemmican, and that's what they eat the rest of the year was pemmican.
Is pemmican like jerky?
Yeah, sort of. You dry out the meat like you would a jerky, and then they would use like a big stone, like mortar and pestle, just grind this stuff up into like just big powdered dried beef and buffalo, and then they would render the fat. Right, so they would sort of melt out the fat to make tallow, and they would mix that in sort of at a 50-50 proportion. Yeah, and that would dry and harden, and you can just eat that. And it's,
I kind of want to try that.
It's good. Yeah. It's really good. Yeah, there's one of the things that I've had. You can't really get it in Australia. I should have brought some for you guys because they send it to me. It's called a Carnivore bar. It's just pemmican. Okay. It's the same idea. You can make it yourself. It's actually very easy. And you just do that exact thing. You use these very thin strips of beef or whatever. You get very cheap, just a very cheap lean cut, and cut them into very, very small thin pieces, dry them out in like a food dehydrator. You can do it in your oven on a very low heat and with the door open. And then you grind that up in like a high powered blender until you powder it, and then you get just melt some tallow. You can just buy grass-fed tallow, and you mix them together in 50-50 proportion by weight. You put that into like a little casserole dish or something like that, put it in the fridge, it'll set, and you just cut off bars, and so it's like
is it all like protein fat bar?
That's it. Yeah. So it's perfect nutrition in a bar. So it's perfect for like, you go camping or hiking.
Does it taste all right, or is it just bland?
I think it tastes great. Yeah. And the Native Americans, apparently a lot of them actually just preferred that. And they're eating like the fresh meat and cooking it. They're like,
well, forgive my memory, but I can't remember the book that I partially read. Didn't read the whole thing, but I remember that part of that being they were talking about some of these other cultures that went to a Western diet. Not only did it affect their obesity and stuff, it was affecting like their jaw structure. Yeah. It was like shifting their
Weston Price.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And like teeth were moving, and like they were sort of shrinking in and creating all these issues. Like
so your jaw size, your tooth development are predominantly nutritional. So crooked teeth are not genetic. Crooked teeth are malnutrition. Generally from vitamin K2. This is in dentistry journals. I read this about 5 years ago in a dentistry journal. It's mostly K2. K2 only comes from meat. You can't get this from plants. So if you're not eating enough meat, it's fat soluble, so you're not eating enough fat. Most people are trimming the fat. They're eating very lean meat, and so you're not getting enough K2, among other things. And so, you're not going to develop your teeth properly. So before the agricultural revolution, and in these native populations that are still eating just meat, like the Native Australians and Native Americans and elsewhere, they had big, wide jaws. They all had the wisdom teeth in. They had perfectly straight teeth. I mean, how many animals in the wild do you see with crooked teeth? No, it's not a thing.
Sharks.
Yeah. But it's not a thing. Like they have very uniform teeth, throughout nature, and humans do too. And then in Weston Price, he looked at these generations of people who moved to London. The grandfather had this big, strong jaw.
I was about to say English people, and you said move to London.
Yeah. And so then so it's K2, K1, D3, and calcium. All these things play a role in this, but most people are deficient in K2. And so, these guys moved to England, moved to London, and the grandfather, there's big, wide, strong jaw, all his teeth, no cavities. The son is like, the jaw is a little more shrunken in, a bit more crooked, crowded teeth. The grandson has just pushed in jaw, and it's just a mouthful of just English teeth.
Because when we're also talking about meat, we're not talking processed meat. We're talking eating good meats, obviously, because that's part of the Western diet. Is it processed meats, sausages, and these sorts?
Well, but also what do they process with, right? What do you add to that?
Fennel and grains and
plants. You're adding plants and sugar, right? Which sugar comes from plants, right? So all these things are plant products that are bad for you, and that's what you process with. So it's not the meat itself.
I'm nearly converted, man. What's the argument against the carnivore diet? Is there not one? Is there anyone that goes, but X, Y, Z?
Because you're clearly an argument against sustainability, because 23 years is a long time.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
and you look about 23.
Yeah, you look about the age you've been at. So yeah,
I'm having a hell anxiety attack. We're recording the sound, hey, after everything.
yeah, it's
okay.
all good. It's all good. Yeah.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. So most people's so there's three major claims, and one is your guest was from an ethical point of view. That's certainly it. The ethics, the bioethics, worried about the animal rights and things like that, which I think that's absolutely something that deserves to be talked about. I think that's important. The other is the environmental aspect, the impact on the environment, and the other is the nutritional aspect. So those are the three main things. And so as far as just the nutritional aspect, the main arguments are fat and cholesterol are bad for you, right? Which we sort of discussed. That's garbage.
Yep.
And we can go more into that. But saturated fat, cholesterol are actually really, really important for you. And they're simply not the boogeyman that people have made out to be. But that's the main one. Oh, what's your cholesterol? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. Is that why?
It's never a problem.
Is that why you hear of that? Is it called like rabbit?
Rabbit starvation.
Rabbit starvation.
What's rabbit starvation?
Very, very high protein. You're not getting any fat. And so you can actually cause harm because you have to have fat. Fat is actually very important.
Because the rabbits were so lean, no fat. And they were people stuck in the wild would eat the rabbits and then almost starve, or they'd be malnutrition.
They'd be very malnourished, And so, they get voraciously hungry. They couldn't eat enough rabbits.
So a bag of pork crackling is no good, or is that all right?
That's fine. Look at the ingredients though. Most of them are like deep fried in sunflower oil.
Yeah.
That stuff's toxic.
Yeah,
just real pork crackling.
Yeah, but you can get it like the stuff that's like fried in lard. That's great. It tastes way better too. And it's much better for you.
My
cooking
world is changing.
And,
5 years of vegetarian, and I'm almost just going to go the exact opposite.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do.
I'm certainly going to try it.
Well, a lot of people, go vegetarian or vegan for very good reasons. They're like, well, this is supposed to be better health. I really care about my health. I care about the environment. I care about this. So this all makes sense. And then you learn, okay, my health isn't actually all that great, and maybe this isn't what I thought it was. But your motivations are still there. And maybe that girl is just like, well, I want to help animals, this and that. So you have these motivations, but when you dig into it more and you find that actually health-wise, and the other one's like, you're not going to get all the nutrients you need just from eating meat. That's not true either. I mean, look at the Inuit, look at me, look at the Aboriginals, look at the Native Americans, look at our history for the last 3 million years. We were only eating meat. Okay. If you can't get everything you need from meat, then all these civilizations don't exist, and humans don't exist. We are apex predators, top of the food chain that was taught throughout history up until yesterday. And they say, no, we were actually herbivores. Since when? Yeah. Like, when have you seen a cave painting of a salad?
That's so true, eh? Yeah. There's no one with a spear aimed at a tomato. No. We're going to sneak up on this crop.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, we have always been eating meat and exclusively meat. We have very good evidence of that with the stable isotope studies looking exactly what animals ate. And you can tell which animals were, up and down the food chain because, you can tell how far away they were from eating plants. You have herbivores, they have a certain amount of nitrogen 15, it's stable in the fossils, and they say, okay, well, this thing was just eating plants. Okay, well, this animal was eating animals that ate plants, and that concentrates as you go up with this nitrogen 15. We have the highest carnivore rating of any animal ever checked before the agricultural revolution. Wow. So we had a higher carnivore rating than lions, hyenas, foxes, wolves alive at the same time in the same area, meaning that we were eating the lions and hyenas and foxes and wolves, including as well as the things that those.
So for people that don't know, nitrogen 15 is an isotope of nitrogen, right? Because nitrogen is normally 14, and you can track that isotope as each animal will digest it. The next animal that gets all of that nitrogen in their system. Is that right? By accumulation or whatever it's called?
It builds up. Yeah, exactly. And it builds up in their bones.
Yeah.
And it's stable. It stays there.
Yeah.
And so you can measure the amount of nitrogen 15 in these bones. And so you actually see the food chain. And so we were top of the food chain. Apex predators. Apex predators don't graze, you know? Great white sharks don't eat kelp.
Hipsters, no cheese boards.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you're going for someone like me or Delby, we're going to start our carnivore journey tomorrow. What are some of your tips?
Learn to hunt.
Because I obviously, we talked about the detachment from the package sort of stuff. Like, where do we probably source our meat? Is like organ meat, is that pretty vital for it? And then chicken and stuff like that.
And how do you get your variation for flavour? Like salt is okay, I would assume, because you could get that naturally.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of people that don't use salt at all. Like I've gone, a long time without salt. It's fine. Things taste a bit more bland for the first couple of weeks, and then it actually tastes fine. I tend to eat less and less and less salt as I go. You don't need it. You don't have to have it.
How do you stop from cramps? Or is it a different kind of salts that stops you from cramping?
It would generally be different things. Like magnesium mostly is what's involved in cramps, and then you actually will have a high magnesium level when you just eat meat. Sometimes people have a bit of electrolyte fluctuations.
And when we say salt, it's not just table salt. Hey, it could be a magnesium chloride, potassium chloride. We just use the word salt.
Salt's a general term, but so when you use
just minerals and
but salting, like when we're talking about salt in the food context, it would be food salt, which is like sodium chloride. But there are tons of other salts, and but sometimes you get like electrolyte fluctuations in your sort of early weeks when you're switching from eating carbohydrates to not eating carbohydrates, going on a any keto sort of diet, because insulin plays a role in pulling back the electrolytes in your kidney, so you don't sort of pee it all out. And so when your insulin drops dramatically, your body has to readjust. You might sort of pee out more electrolytes than you want to. That's the theory. I find in practice most people don't have a problem, and but if you do, you just take some electrolytes. It's not a big deal. You don't only need to do it for a short term. When I test my bloods and my patients' bloods, we don't see electrolyte deficiencies. Actually, magnesium is very, very good levels, and the rest of it's good levels as well. People talk about potassium, getting cramps with potassium. Like when we have patients, first of all, it's very, very rare to get someone with a potassium deficiency, even in the hospital. You have to be very sick. Something has to be going very wrong, because it's very important to keep your potassium in very tight levels, because if it goes too high, it goes too low, it affects your heart, and your heart gets arrhythmias. And so how they kill people with like lethal injection, with death penalties, in various places they do that. They anesthetize them, they put them to sleep, and then they give them a big whack of potassium chloride, and that raises their potassium up to such a high level their heart just stops. Yeah. Right? Because it goes into a fatal arrhythmia, and it just stops. So that's what you're playing with when you're playing with potassium. So you don't really get cramps. When people have this and we're supplementing them in the hospital and things like that, and their potassium's really low, they're not just going, oh my God, I've got cramps and all these sorts of things. They get atrial fibrillation. They get their heart starts going funny. Yeah. And that's what we see. So
they must have potassium in the jab.
And but magnesium can cause cramps and things like that. I find it's mostly dehydration. And when you're eating more and more and more salt, you actually up your demand for water as well, because your body's actually trying to clear all this stuff. It's like, we don't want all this salt.
And so you become hyponatremic.
Hyponatremic is if you are just drinking way too much water.
And then you're diluting the
and you're just peeing out too much. But that's hard to do too. You have to be pretty sick as well. But you can do it. You can overdo it. But if you're drinking to thirst and you're salting to taste, you really aren't going to get into a problem like that. It'd be very uncommon. So
what's a meal like your day look like?
So I normally if you're eating high density nutrition, then you don't need to eat as much or as often. So I tend to eat in the evenings. I think that I feel best doing that. After you eat like a big meal, just like a lion, takes down a gazelle and it eats that, it's like sleeps for 16 hours, right? Because you've expended the energy to get your kill, to get your food, and now your body's like, right, rest and digest, take it easy, don't waste energy anymore. So you get naturally lethargic, naturally sleepy, and you just, you naturally want to go to bed. And so that works very well for me in the evening. If I were to eat sort of during the day, I can still get that lethargy. And I'm like, well, I've got things to do and I can't really do that. So I might eat like a half meal if I wanted to do that. But mostly I'll eat in the evening. And if I eat in the evening and I get enough fatty meat, then I find that I'm not hungry until the next evening. So like I haven't had breakfast today. I don't feel like having lunch. I'm just going to go and do my thing. And later on I'll have a big steak.
And for 23 years, you're mentally like, that's normal now. Hey,
that's very normal.
Because before, if you are switching, your brain's like, this is eat time. And does your body react to what you've been doing and you have to push through? Because it sounds like you're naturally doing like an 18 and 6 or something like that, like an intermittent fast.
Yeah, intermittent fasting almost.
Or like a 23 and 1.
Whoa!
Because because I'm really just having one meal,
Which and what does that usually consist of? Just
big steak.
So the organ meat isn't necessarily hugely vital for that, or?
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Not long term. I mean, if you're coming from a nutritional deficit and you're eating like this, nutrient deprived sort of plant-based Western diet, or coming from a background of vegetarianism, there's some catching up to do. And liver is very, very nutrient dense. It is, but the problem is that it is nutrient dense, and so it can have too much, right? So you can actually get hypervitaminosis.
Yeah, apparently the Liver King, it had steroids in his liver.
Yeah.
Way too much. What are the odds?
Just bags of growth hormone.
Yeah. So it's not vital. I could live off chicken or live off steak or.
Well, yeah, no, you get everything you need just from fatty meat.
Fatty meat.
You look at
chicken not fatty meat, hey?
Not really.
Yeah.
So chicken wings and the thighs and drumsticks.
The good parts.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Why is that the good part? Because it has.
I find breasts too dry.
Yeah, well, they are because they don't have fat, and that's what we were told to eat because it doesn't have fat, right?
Yeah.
So chicken breast is not the best option for.
No. You want the fat.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely want the fat.
For your health or for cutting weight or for both?
Everything. Fat's really important. So your brain is made out of very long chain fatty acids, 20 and 22 chain fatty acids. Those don't exist in plants. We are very poor at making them. DHA, EPA, 70% of the solid matter of your brain is fat. 20% of that fat is DHA, right?
And DHA stands for?
Oh, gosh.
Is it like a...
Well, I'm blanking on the full chemical name, but it's a particular fatty acid.
Okay.
That does not
exist.
You get
from fat.
That you get from animals specifically. And this is why they call fish brain food, because they have a lot of DHA and EPA.
Right.
And so that is what our brain is a big portion of it is made of. It does not exist in plants. We don't make it very well ourselves. We can make a bit of it, but we need more than what
That's why vegans are dumber than us.
So we talk about that
hang on.
fat stupid brain. Yeah. So
that was the thing. There was actually a study out of Oxford in 2008 that actually looked at compared vegans and other people and just normal diet, and they found that after 5 years of being vegan,
that's your length.
And they were taking yearly MRIs.
Not vegans.
They're taking yearly MRIs, and they found that after 5 years, their brains had atrophied by upwards of 5% by volume. Right? Wow. You are constant. You don't just build a brain and it just stays there forever. You have to maintain it.
And so, what about me, vegetarian?
Well, what the impact? What animal products were you? Dairy? Were you eating eggs?
Eggs and dairy.
Eggs are great. Eggs are perfect nutrition.
I was eating a fuckload of eggs.
Well, there you go.
Honest.
Yeah. So you could live on eggs
because lots of fat.
And it's a lot of fat, and like the yolk. If you just eat the yolk and don't eat the white. That's 80% calories from fat, and then 20 from protein. You add the whites in there, then it's 60-40. And so, but it's also a perfect protein, because it's not just a matter of getting the essential proteins. Now, first of all, essential proteins mean that we can't make them, but we need them. But there are other proteins that we do make that we actually benefit from having more in our diet as well. Like carnitine, and not everybody makes enough of these things as well. Like, so, some kids don't make enough carnitine, or they don't make carnitine at all, and you have to get it from your diet. Carnitine is integral for your mitochondrial health and your brain function and your brain development. You can't develop proper neurons without an adequate amount of carnitine. And so this is something I found because I was asking questions. I was saying, okay, if we are carnivores, and then we should see this in the data. So I said, okay, and I was looking at all these different diseases. They're all going up at the same time, like after the 1980s, when we stopped eating meat, started eating more plant-based, and all these diseases, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, even things like autism, they all increase at the exact same time. And when I figured that out for autism, I was like, wait a minute, is autism diet related? Because it's going up. When did it start going up? It started going up at the exact same time all these other diseases.
Seems way more prevalent now than it was.
It is.
But they say, it's underdiagnosed.
It's a lazy way of explaining it.
So lazy. So this is what they're saying, they say, it was probably the same numbers back in the 60s and 70s. We just didn't notice it. You're like, because everyone born before 1986 is retarded.
Yeah.
So they just wouldn't have noticed it. They're just going around drooling all the time.
Exactly.
All the guys that invented the iPhone and like Tesla and all that sort of shit. They're just idiots.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? These guys were the pioneers. They did way more with way less. Of course they noticed this stuff. Anyone who says this, like, they just didn't notice that someone had autism, clearly does not have a relative or a friend with autism. Like, this is something you notice. This is a serious misdevelopment of the brain, and I think it is a misdevelopment. I don't think that they're genetically supposed to develop like that, as pointed out by the fact the University of Texas A&M did a study. I was looking and saying, okay, well, if this is the case, then you should see higher rates of autism in vegans and vegetarians. And that's exactly what we find.
Wow.
There are much higher rates. And there are associative studies, but there are also causative studies. There was a study out of Texas A&M that showed that at least one of the causes of a certain type of autism is this carnitine deficiency. And some people don't make enough carnitine or don't make it at all. But this wasn't something that showed up because everyone was eating meat, everyone was eating eggs,
and so they got enough.
It's not. Well, it's not. This is
factual.
This is absolutely factual. I can send you guys the study. They showed causation between the two.
Is there a way to, with this knowledge, like if they're saying it's diet based, if a child is exhibiting autism, but you can fix the diet, will autism go away?
It can repair, and so the younger you get them, the better it'll be. So, when the brain's still developing, you can actually reverse a lot of harm. And in fact, a lot of people are doing that by even just a ketogenic diet, getting people, their brains running on the proper energy, because your actual brain wants to run on ketones. Your ketones cross the blood-brain barrier and then reconstitute into fatty acids, which actually are some of the important building blocks of your brain. This is something we see in Alzheimer's as well. They're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes now because of this insulin resistance. And then when you switch over to a ketogenic diet, there was a study that looked at putting people on a high-fat keto meat-based diet, and they found that had better efficacy for treating people with active Alzheimer's than every medication ever trialed. See, this is when you're talking about food being the medicine and getting rid of medications, and I know you're a doctor and you prescribe medicines and you work in that industry, but it really appeals to me because I'm always of the ilk that we can heal our body with food and we can prevent things from with our food.
That's the perfect marriage for you as a neuroscientist and is it neuroscientist or neurosurgeon?
Oh, I'm in neurosurgery.
And this food thing, how there's like a perfect overlap.
I think so. Yeah.
And that brings what you just said about food being the medicine. What about plants that have medicinal purposes for humans? What's that all about if the carnivore diet doesn't want it, but it can fix some stuff?
If you're sick, take medicine, right? Yeah. And certainly things can have medicinal properties, but like we've been using food as medicine. We've been doing that for 2,500 years. That was a quote attributed to Hippocrates. Maybe he said it, maybe he didn't, but it's old. Let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food, right? So your body is doing really the most of the heavy lifting here. You know, even when I do, we do surgery on someone, I'm just stitching people back together with string. It's their body that's healing that. So,
Wow.
this is the big argument I heard a lot, is that, some things are better. Everyone's different. Depending on your blood type, you might be a vegan or herbivore. I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, let's be honest. Like, one protein difference on your red blood cells is not going to fundamentally change your entire digestive system. And you're not all of a sudden, like, if you have, type A blood, you're supposed to be an herbivore if you're type A blood. Like, what the fuck kind of sense does that make?
Yeah.
So those type A blood, lions, they're just supposed to eat grass. Then,